with us tonight. If you would take a moment and find your way to 3 John. 3 John. You may have been there this week if you've kept up with the reading, right? That was one of the chapters, I believe, this week before starting Revelation. The last little while has been, right? This last part of the year has been in the writing of John. So as you're getting there, and I get to say, welcome to those of us who are out tonight. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to speak. I'm grateful for that opportunity, and I'm thankful for your attention with us tonight. I'm going to notice kind of at the beginning this one verse, which is going to kind of serve as our kind of introductory text, where he says in the middle of this letter that we are to imitate certain things, right? Beloved, be not imitators of that which is evil, but imitate that which is good. Whoever does good is from God. Whoever does evil has not seen God. And so, if you see up there, I couldn't figure out how to say this, right? How do you say that we need to imitate, but we don't want to be imitation? Does that make sense? That's what right? We don't want to be fake, right? But we still are encouraged to be imitators, and we're going to talk about that for a little bit tonight. So I'm going to leave that one up there for right now. Let's read through the letter together. It's fairly quick. So 3 John. To the elder, to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth, Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you, and that you may be in good health as it goes well with your soul. For I rejoiced greatly when the brothers came and testified to your truth, as indeed you are walking in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Beloved, as it is a faithful thing you do in all of your efforts for these brothers, strangers as they are, who testify to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their journey in a manner worthy of God, for they have gone out for the sake of the name, accepting nothing from the Gentiles. Therefore, we ought to support people like these, that we may be fellow workers for the truth. I've written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. If I come, I will bring up what he is doing, talking wicked nonsense against us, and not content with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers, and also stop those who want to, and puts them out of the church. Beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. Whoever does good is from God. Whoever does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has received a good testimony from everyone and from the truth itself. We also add our testimony, and you know that our testimony is true. I have much to write to you, but I would rather not write with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. Peace to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends, every one of them. It's an interesting little letter. I don't know how often we think about it as subject matter for necessarily preaching and teaching, but notice that little part that he says, right? Do not imitate evil, but imitate good. And then there's that statement, right? Whoever does evil has not seen God. And so that seems to be something that's a little bit important. He makes another statement there in verse 4, right? He makes that statement, which is the other kind of description, right? We've noticed that he talks about imitating, and here in 3 John 4, he said, you know what really, really, really brings me joy? Is when I hear that there are people who learn the truth and choose to walk in the truth. Did you notice that about this? We're gonna have all of that. And if you've ever spent any time at all studying John, right? Truth is a big topic. It's in the gospel, it's in 1 John, it's in 2 John, it's in 3 John, and it's in the book of Revelation. Truth is there. I know love is there, keeping the commandments is there, right? Part of it, though, is truth. You shall know. Jesus says, you shall know the truth. John chapter 8. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. But you know, we don't walk in it. I can know it, but if I don't do anything with it, then it's just a book that's up on the shelf or on the coffee table or in a prominent position. You keep it dusted so when the family and friends come over, they can see it. And think about, I have probably 40 versions that I can get to quickly, right? Everything from extremely literal translations that are next to impossible to read because they're so stilted, to some paraphrase that after you read it, you don't know what the Bible really says, right? I mean, they're all within reach. But do we think about that? So for the rest of our lesson, really quickly, I only want to talk about these three. I held up 4 fingers. These 3 things, right? One is mimicry. I'm using some fancy words. Mimicry, right? That's this idea that we're going to imitate, but we're not going to become fake. The second idea is exemplars, right? If we're going to imitate, we have to have something to imitate. So we want to talk a little bit about exemplars, right? That's the fancy word for what? Role model, right? A role model. And we're going to notice that there are good ones and there are bad ones, right? And that's something that we need to recognize, especially when we realize that no matter what we do, we're setting an example. It might be good, it might be bad, but we're setting it, right? So that's the little bit that's kind of scary. So anyway, that's kind of the introduction. I want to dive in and get us to think about this. The word itself in the original, we know that word today, right? And you might see it up there. I don't know, part of it's a little bit small. But the Greek word is, in essence, we have some teachers here. Y'all will remember these. They're called mimeograph machines. Do y'all remember the old mimeographs, right? Right? And so mimic literally is the word, right? Our word mimic comes from the Greek word mimeomai, or whatever it is, mimeomai, or whatever it is there, right? But it's that mimeo, right? That's our word mimic. That's our word for mimeograph, right? To reproduce faithfully, right? It's supposed to look like the original. There in Philippians chapter 3, he makes that statement. Brothers, join in imitating me. Philippians chapter 3, verse 17. Join in imitating me and keep your eyes on those who walk according to the example you have in us, right? So that's this idea of imitation is we're but get with it. Don't forget that John here is talking in terms of people that are walking in the truth. Here, Paul is saying, you have examples of people that are walking in the truth, right? And so you ought to pay attention to those kind of people with the realization that we're involved, right? That we're not just doing it for show. one of the things that Jesus condemns the most in the gospel accounts is, well, the fancy word is what? Hypocrisy, right? That's the fancy word. The simple word is fake, right? Just being fake. Just wanting people to think a certain way about you when that's really not who you are. So I have another passage that's up there. I want to read this because it's kind of an interesting area. So this is the passage that's in 2 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, and I'm going to begin there in verse 6. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, beginning in verse 6. Now we command you, brothers, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you keep away from any brother who's walking in idleness and not according to the traditions that you receive from us. For you yourselves know how you ought to imitate us, because we were not idle when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's bread without paying for it, but with toil and labor we worked night and day, that we might not be a burden to any of you. It is not because we do not have the right, but to give you in ourselves an example to imitate, even in the simplest things. Right? Even in this simple thing of being active, being involved, not being a burden, making sure that you're pulling your own weight, but enjoying the benefits of your labor, right? Why are we to labor? What did Paul, I'm not going to turn to it, I'm going to have you kind of do your memory work for yourself. What was one of the things that Paul talked about to the Thessalonians? It was right that they weren't supposed to go out and get things in an unrighteous manner. No, that they were to labor so that they would have things to share with others, right? And so he's saying we weren't idle when we were among you. And even in these simple things, why? Even though he says we had the right, we could have demanded, say, you need to put us up, you need to take care of us. We're doing such good work for the Lord, you ought to pay attention to what we're doing. And he says, no. We're leaving you an example. So that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about that we're going to be imitating, but we're going to be imitating in a direction. And so we need to think a little bit about examples. This is an interesting book because there's a lot of examples just in the book, right? We can think of other examples, but if you think through just the people that are in the book, and this really, I guess I'm kind of leaving out a group. A lot of times when I started kind of putting this lesson together and I looked at some other examples and stuff, a lot of times the character studies are just Diotrephes and Demetrius. And that's the only people that seem to get talked about. But there's more people here, right? There's John, who's writing the letter itself. And I'm not going to go through all of the background, but you think of this one who at one point in Jesus' ministry with his brothers ready to call fire down and destroy this Samaritan village, right? Because they apparently had shunned Jesus. And yeah, we know him most of the time as the apostle of love, based on his writings of the gospel and then especially 1 John. So we kind of know that. And here, even to the end of his life, he still has this concern. What was kind of the subtext of the letter again? Do you kind of remember? That there were some people who were traveling because they were teaching, right? They were spreading the word. They were workers for the truth. And because of whatever Diotrephes was getting involved in and whatever his relationship was with John and whatever relationship he had with Gaius and whatever all of that was going on, in the midst of that, these men, right, were going out for the sake of the name. Verse 7, they had gone out for the sake of the name. They wanted to do, they were active, they were involved. We don't know what all their relationship exactly was with John even. So we have this Gaius or Gaius who John's heard a lot about, right? Did you notice that? He knows that things are going well with his soul, and this is just kind of a sidelight. I know a lot of people kind of have debates on this point, but notice that he says, I pray that all may go well with you and that you may be in good health as it goes with your soul. He's saying, I want you physically to be prosperous, at least because I know something about your soul already. Right? Your soul's in good shape. He's not saying you're perfect, that you don't need to keep striving to do those good things. But he's saying that I hope you're as healthy as your soul is. Would we want that prayer made for us? Would we want to be as healthy physically as our soul is spiritually? That's just a question to think about. Right? I can't answer for you. But that was what John's belief in Gaius was. That he could say, you know what? I hope that you're as healthy physically as you are spiritually. That seems to me what he's saying, right? That he wanted him to prosper, but he knew something about him, his state spiritually. And since his state spiritually was in a good position, these other things could follow, right? I rejoiced greatly, verse 3, when the brothers came and testified to your truth, right? We hear a lot about that in our day and age. Well, I have to live out my truth, right? But what standard is it? What standard is? It seems John understands something about the standard that Gaius was following up, and his truth was he was being truthful, faithful to the truth that had been delivered to him. And so that's John. I'm just so overjoyed when I hear that my children are walking in the truth. So he goes on and he talks about the brothers. We talked about them a little bit, right? This is a faithful thing that you do in all your efforts for these brothers, even though they were strangers, right? He was willing to be involved in them because of what they were doing. They had gone out for the sake of the name. And so we know something about the brothers, right? That they're willing to face hardship because of the sake of the name. They're out there. They're doing things. They're involved. They want the truth to be known. And they'll do it with anyone. They love the support that they get. But then we have Diotrephes, the church dictator, sometimes he gets called, who likes to put himself, I think when I remember hearing it growing up, he likes the preeminence, right? He likes the first place. And I think most of us know people that are like that, right? You may be involved in an organization or something, or maybe you've even been involved in a church where stuff like this happens. Fortunately, at this congregation, we have really good leaders, right? We have good examples there. Kay talked about that this morning, and I'm bringing it up again tonight, right? Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 7. Remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith, right? We look up to those who bring us the word, bring us the truth, those who shepherd our souls. We look up to them to see the things that we should look for in our own lives in the direction that we should go. And then he brings up this other guy, Demetrius. We know other Demetriuses. We have to worry, right, we have to separate in our mind that there's a Demetrius that Paul writes to Timothy about, right? And we don't want to get confused here because this Demetrius sounds like he's He's really good, right? He's received a good testimony. He sounds like somebody that Gaius could relate to, right? That Demetrius is almost being brought up here as somebody that Gaius could understand, right? He goes on to talk about Demetrius has received, verse 12, a good testimony from everyone and from the truth itself. There it is again. He's what? His truth is again the Lord's truth. The truth that Jesus brought that sets us free. And so that's what he wants. And we also add our testimony, right? And so he's saying other people talk about Demetrius this way, and I'm saying the same thing about him. A couple of quick last thoughts. This all starts just like the beginning of Romans chapter 12, right? In Romans chapter 12, after Paul has spent a considerable amount of time discussing what salvation is all about, how faith works, what its place is in the scheme that God had from the foundation of the world, from before the foundation of the world. I didn't put it up here, but Romans is the bookends of the book of Romans, right, is Romans chapter 1, what is it, verse 5, and Romans chapter 16, verse 20. Is it 25? Anyway, it's talking about the obedience of faith, right? That Paul, I'm bringing about the obedience of faith for all nations. Anyway, Romans chapter 12, beginning in verse 1, therefore, brethren, I appeal to you by the mercies of God to present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by a renewal of the mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. That takes us. You can't fake that. We can look to good examples to imitate, to know the direction that we should go, but ultimately we have to do the walking. He was overjoyed that his children were walking in the truth. They weren't just thinking about it. They were doing something with it. It had become part of their lives. And they were genuine. He doesn't use that word, right? But he did talk about their truth. That sounds to me like he's saying they were genuine. Are we that kind of genuine? We could really dive in. You really, want to get into that. You jump down to verse 9 in Romans chapter 12. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Don't be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. That's just, he is just like got a shotgun out and is just blasting, right? He's just peppering us with things that we ought to think about. And it all starts with let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Make it an important part of your life. hold on to that. For many years, one of the couples where we were would host a couple of youth events during the year. A lot of it was mostly the Florida college kids in Southern California. But there were others that would come that didn't always go to camp. And one of the times I was asked to talk, I brought up these four little things. And I don't think it's just good for youth. I think it's good for all of us. But those ideas that are there, right? Setting an example, right? There's one to realize that we're natural mimics, that we just imitate people, right? That's just what we do. I have a toddler, right? A grandson, and if he sees it, he wants to do it. If he hears it, he wants to say it, right? And we're just that way. And so we need to pay attention, and we need to look for examples that are out there. We need to focus on those that are good and those that are bad and pay attention to which direction we want to turn. But it's always that realization that we're setting the example too. And if we're going to be genuine about it, if we're going to move forward, right, we have to allow that truth to transform us so that we're not conformed to the things of the world. So these four little things, I've always thought they were kind of interesting. Be present, right? Show up. Be involved, right? Don't just hide, right? When the doors are open, be present. When there's events that are going on, be involved. And be all in, right? That's part of it. It's not just, I'm going through this, right? No, be active, be involved. Like those brothers, those strangers, they were present, they were all in, and serve one another, right? Be a servant. And let people see. I know that sounds funky, right? But remember we read Matthew chapter 5, or at least I had it on the board up there. I don't know if I didn't specifically refer to it, I guess, right? In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says in verse 8, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Remember what 3 John 11 said? Those who practice evil have not seen God. Right? You can't practice evil and be pure in heart. He goes on to say, though, verse 13, "You're the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, that it shall give light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." Right? Those are just some things about being transformed, where we're not just some imitation cookie cutter, just going through the motions Christian, but we're somebody that's active, involved, all in, seeking to serve, and let others see it so that they can give God the glory. That transformation starts with the truth. That truth that comes from the Word of God. One of the examples that is set for us is that example that Paul refers to in Romans chapter 6, right? That we were buried with him in baptism. That just as Jesus was raised from the dead, we also should walk in newness of life. That's the opportunity that comes with the gospel, and it's the invitation that we offer. If there's anything that can be said or done on anyone's behalf, please let us know as we stand and sing.